Welcome to Better Life Conversations. Have you ever looked around you and wondered, how on earth can I make a difference in this crazy world that I'm in? Have you looked around and seen needs? Maybe a child that's homeless or hurting. There's so many things around us that it can really become overwhelming. And God has given us a task. He's told us we need to engage. We need to care for those who are unfortunate, who are less fortunate than we are. And that's what we're going to talk about today in this conversation. Tom Evans with Child Impact is joining me, and welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's good to be here, Charlie.
I love these kind of conversations because, just like I was saying, I am one of those who looks around me and can just be overwhelmed by all the need. So your focus has been on children, but let's back up a little bit. Tell me what started you down the path of ministry and how you ended up where you are now.
Sure. I grew up going to church, being very active, very involved. As I entered my university years, I decided to be a pastor.
Okay.
And yet I had something dramatic really that began to happen, and that was my faith seemed to start to crumble. And I really wondered what was going on. In fact, I got to the point where I even began to question, does God even exist?
Sure.
Fortunately, I would say probably it was a divine appointment, as I've written about what divine appointments are all about. Mm-hmm. There was a speaker on the campus that had come to give a seminar on faith development. And it was there that I learned that as we grow up as children, we have a borrowed faith. We are really borrowing the faith of our parents. And that if we're going to have a mature faith, that we have to own that ourselves. We have to go on our own journey. For some people, that journey is smoother than mine was.
Right.
And for me, I was at the point where I was wondering, am I just going to throw everything out?
Right.
But I caught the speaker afterwards walking across campus, and I just said, what should I do? I'm studying to be a pastor, and I don't even know if God exists.
Yeah.
And so he encouraged me to not try to assemble everything all at once, but to put one foundation piece in place at a time. And so that's what I did. I began to research. Really, it was a very apologetic, what they call apologetics approach of really researching the reasons why we have a faith, researching what historical Christianity is all about, who Jesus was. Was he real? Did he rise from the dead? Was he a Messiah, or was he something else? And so I began to look at those arguments, almost like a litigation or a case for Christ. And in that journey, I began to put one element of that foundation in place at a time until it came together, and my faith came back together, and I became a pastor.
Right. So let's shift gears then and talk about Child Impact. What was the trigger that had you looking more at the needs of children in your community and beyond?
Well, my wife and I really have been on this journey. When we were dating, my wife said she wanted to have 10 children.
Wow.
And I thought there's no way this is going to be true,
Right.
and I don't know how we could even manage that. So I took my chances, but she won. We're up to number 9 now.
Wow.
And of course for her that was through adoption, that she intended that we'd reach that higher number. So we've adopted 4 children. I don't know if we're done yet. I don't know if we'll hit the 10 or not.
Right.
But that has been a beautiful journey. And so when this opportunity came along with Child Impact, it really resonated with our lived experience and choices that we made in our own lives. Respite care for foster kids, hosting exchange students, sponsoring kids through organizations that help kids go to school, and then adoption. We'd really poured our lives in terms of how we personally aligned ministry for us. It seemed to be in this area of helping kids.
Right.
And so when the offer came to take this role, to lead Child Impact, it became really, for my wife and I both, a conviction that God was calling us to this. And my wife had told me she always wanted to have an orphanage that she could run. And so I told her, I'm taking this job for you. And she said, no, don't do that. This needs to be God calling you to do this. And I was, because it's just been such a passion on her heart, but it's really been contagious.
Right.
And it has captured my heart as well. So we just brought 2 girls home from Bulgaria. So that was in January. And so it's something we continue to live in our lives.
Wow. So you were serving here in the Oregon Conference at the time as the outreach ministries director, is that correct?
That's correct.
So was there some fear in making that leap into this new world?
Well, when it's a nonprofit organization, it's totally dependent on donor funds. We don't receive any government funds. It's individuals who feel called to this mission that we have to help the most vulnerable children in the world. So yes, it's a little nerve-wracking to know that every year you have to raise those funds to support the ministry, and to leave that certainty that I had with my previous role to step out into the unknown. It's kind of something I enjoy, but also, it's like, wow, this is a big shift.
Yeah. Is there a story you could share that kind of punctuated the fact that you had made the right decision in pivoting your entire life over to this Child Impact Ministry?
Well, when I went out to where the headquarters are at, I stopped by to see a friend, and he offered me a job on the spot. And so when I went into the Child Impact interview, I said, look, I'm going to be moving out here whether you guys offer this job or not, but this is where I feel God is calling me. This is where I feel God is leading us. And so that was really confirmed by the board there as well, as they invited us to come. But I've had some pretty enjoyable opportunities in ministry over the years, and this one is the top. There's no doubt. Every day you know that you're involved in saving lives, in totally changing the world for a child. Over and over again.
So tell us specifically, what is the mission of Child Impact Ministries?
So Child Impact started in 1966 as a sponsorship program in Asia. And so initially it was called Asian Aid. So for decades this ministry has gone on and grown, and then started a location in the United States, an office in the United States called Asian Aid USA. Eventually the leaders of that entity determined that they wanted to go more global and not just restrict that ministry to Asia. And so became Child Impact International, separate from Asian Aid, which still functions today. And then about 10 years ago, launched a new initiative called Operation Child Rescue, and really is taking a lead in the fight against human trafficking. What's exciting about that is because we have such a network of schools and thousands of students globally, we can rescue these children to something. And so, the first step in rescuing a child is for them to have a safe place and a loving environment. But after that, you want them to be able to break out of this trap that they've been in that's led or ended up in human trafficking. And so for them to have an education is the best way to do that. And so by us already having those in place, one of the questions we ask ourselves is, where can we add a rescue component to places where we already have schools and where we are already working?
Now, you brought a clip that we can show that kind of tells one of those stories. Is that correct?
Sure. Let's start with the one of Miracle Moses.
Okay, let's play that now.
When I first met Jerry from Falco's Children's Village here in Tanzania, one of the first stories that emerged was that of Miracle Moses, a remarkable story of a young boy whose mother felt desperate and did not know what to do with this baby. And so she actually buried him in a shallow grave in a graveyard. Providentially, a shepherd was passing by just at the right moment where Miracle Moses' life could be spared. I didn't have an opportunity to meet him until he was already a grown boy. But I was so excited when I had the chance to see him firsthand and to begin interacting with him and develop a friendship now over my visits to the Falco's Children's Village. He's a very bright young man. He's a little shy, but he's growing and flourishing. And we're so excited that he has a chance because Falco's Children's Village has made a commitment to rescue children who are abandoned and who need their care in order to survive. Miracle Moses' story is only one of many stories here at Falco's Children's Village. So many of them are heartbreaking. In fact, some are so graphic, we cannot even share the details of those stories. My heart has been broken so many times as I hear the desperate situations that these children find themselves in, not of their own making, but because They've been involved in circumstances beyond their control that leave them vulnerable. Miracle Moses represents a commitment that Jerry has to rescue any child that God asks him to take. In fact, he told me that he will never say no.
When I heard we were finally given permission to take care of all 33 babies at one time, I just don't want to ever say no to a child that needs help. I mean, I don't know anybody that would say no to a child that's been abused.
Rather than being overwhelmed, he was overjoyed that God would invite him to step into the lives of these babies and intervene on their behalf. Miracle Moses and the 33 babies illustrate the power of God as a mighty warrior who will act on behalf of vulnerable children and who will empower those who are committed to make a difference here in this world.
So that is an incredible story, and it just highlights the vulnerability our children have. What are some other vulnerable populations that you deal with?
Of course, it's obvious a baby can't take care of themselves, and so without this safety net provided at Falcos, these children would not have survived.
Right.
But I always say that the most vulnerable individual in the world is a 12-year-old girl.
Why is that?
They're just becoming a young lady.
Okay.
And that is the moment where they're most at risk. I think of a girl we met on the streets in Kigoma, Tanzania. She was begging for food. And she shared with us that it had been maybe a couple weeks since she'd had a proper meal. She was sleeping in an open-air train station with a group of about 15 or 20 boys. And they said that these men now were starting to come and to try to abuse her, and that they were trying to protect her from these men. The question is, how long could they do that? She's extremely vulnerable. And so we were able to work with government officials and to get the legal ability to place her at our school.
Okay.
And a year later, I've been able to meet her. Her name's Angel. She's in the Pathfinder Club. She's flourishing. She's in the choir, the school choir. And her life has just completely changed.
Right. So you mentioned the government officials. So that means you are working with the government agencies, that you have a reputation that when there's a need, they know who you are. How does that relationship work?
Probably the tightest relationship we have that way. There's two different countries where that's very strong. Tanzania, I just mentioned, we had this assistant head police commissioner for all of Tanzania who accompanied our team for half of our trip that we were on just recently. And he is just extremely appreciative of the work that we're doing in helping to rescue these girls. And he's saying, look what you saw today, and what experiences that they're having, and what privileges and opportunities that they have because they've been rescued. But the strongest probably connection is in Colombia, where the president of parliament has actually visited our project. And he's number 3rd ranking official for the country. In fact, the president of Colombia is aware of our project and wants to visit. We're working as the only project of its type to protect indigenous children. And so we have a rescue home there. And since that rescue home has been erected and started a little over a year ago, over 100 child abusers have been arrested. So when we go there, we have to have a police presence with us.
Right.
So there are people that love us for protecting these kids, but there are also those that have been called out for their taking advantage of these children and hurting these children, and they've been arrested and so on.
Right. So this is a really important point. You know, you can read so many stories in the Bible about how we are called to act in a certain way, and even if or maybe especially if we're different from what the world is, people start to see that. And in your actions and putting children first, the community starts to see that and see you as a safe resource. So again, it really highlights the fact that that's who we need to be. We need to be people who are known about caring for other people so that we can be more effective as we're engaging.
Yeah, and Charlie, it's amazing because I usually wear clothes that are branded with Child Impact. Have it right there. And people, when I'm going on a plane or anywhere, And it's been so interesting. I was just at the doctor the other day, and the nurse said, well, what do you do for work? And I said, well, I'm involved in fighting human trafficking. She gave me a high five right there.
Right.
And, I've walked onto the airplane before. What's Child Impact? What do you do? And I always lead with, say, we fight human trafficking. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter whether somebody's a Christian or completely secular or of another religion. Everyone that is a decent human being cares about the safety of children.
Yeah, it's a total trigger word, right? Because you're thinking of these vulnerable children, but maybe we don't know the full picture of that. So what are the different types of trafficking?
To give an idea of the scope of the human trafficking issue in the world, the number of victims reaches 50 million, which is greater than the population of California, to put it in context. Yeah. The challenge today with human trafficking, where there's more slavery today than at any time in Earth's history, is that it is out of sight, which means that it is out of mind.
Right.
And so what we try to do with Child Impact is to raise that level of awareness. The majority of human trafficking takes place overseas. In fact, 98% of human trafficking takes place outside the United States. 2% is still a lot here in America, but America's issue is a little different. 50 to 60% of the kids trafficked in the U.S. come from the foster care system.
Really?
The other big challenge is underage pornography. And so those are very different issues than what happens overseas, with poverty being the driver for human trafficking.
So you had a story you wanted to share to help inform us on that. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Our largest project began with a desire to rescue 25 girls at a location where we already had hundreds of children in our sponsorship program.
Okay.
So initially, the thought was that we would rent a dormitory off-site, and they would be accompanied onto campus so they would be safe. And so as soon as we, began finding these girls that are being trafficked, our partner requested if we could take that number to 35, and then there was another girl that came, so we ended up with 36 in a rented dormitory. A donor heard about this and committed to build a dormitory for 100 girls and fully fund it. So that's what we did. So now there's a rescue project for 100 girls. Well, that's been completed, and I was traveling there with one of our board members who met these girls and saw the huge difference that had taken place in their lives, total transformation. He saw where they'd come from, went and visited some of the homes where they'd grown up, and saw where they'd been trafficked. And he came back and said, Tom, we need a second dormitory. I will raise the funds to have 2 dorms. So this, as of a few months from now, this will be a project to rescue 200 girls. And as they graduate, more girls can be rescued. Right. So it's an amazing project. Mary is one of those girls, and this video shares her story.
All right, let's take a look.
Mary was orphaned at the age of 4. She's now 17 years old and still has no idea what actually happened to her parents. What she does know is that she's been given an opportunity to pursue her education. And she has a sponsor. I'm so excited that our family has been able to sponsor Mary. And she has such big dreams for her life. First of all, she wants to volunteer, take a gap year to do some work here for Child Impact together with Monda. But after that, she wants to pursue her education and become a civil engineer. She wants to go to university. None of these dreams would have been possible for a girl orphaned at 4 years old. So it is so rewarding as a sponsor to meet her, to talk with her, to hear her share about her dreams for the future, and know that all these things are now possible. When these girls are rescued, there is a context that indicates that likely these girls have been trafficked or they're at very high risk of being trafficked. But they actually don't share their story for several months until they've been in a safe place. And when they share their story, they write it out in a letter form. I've heard these stories firsthand from the girls. I've read these stories. I've seen the pain that these girls have been through, the trauma that they've experienced. But I've also seen the healing. I've seen the glow in their faces and in their eyes as their lives have begun to be restored, as their childhood has begun to be experienced again, as they've been able to pursue their dreams. I know that sponsorship changes lives because I've seen it here firsthand.
As a girl, if we don't have safety, there are those men out there who try to rape girls and all those things, which is bad. And here at Riverside, it's very safe. We eat a lot of food, safe food, clean water, clean everything. I'm even gaining weight. I mean, look at my cheeks. Well, for other girls like me, I want them to have more than what I have. I want them to have that safe space. I want them to pursue their dreams. As long as Child Impact is there, everything will be fine for them. I believe so. Just want to say thank you to my sponsor. I love you. Take care of yourself and your family. You really mean a lot in my life. You hold a place in my heart. I'm really thankful.
So this video really punctuates how rewarding it can be to help somebody and the difference you can make in somebody's life. You know, you threw out a number earlier though of 50 million kids, but if we get overwhelmed by these large numbers, does it make it easier for some people to maybe not even want to get started? How do you communicate to somebody that this one child is worth your time?
When we get too overwhelmed, we become paralyzed to inaction. And that is exactly what shouldn't happen.
Right.
And that's why we have to reduce the picture to just one and say, I can make a world of difference for this one. Kind of an update on Mary. She's now graduated from high school as number 2. She tied for number 2 in her class.
Okay.
She wants to be a civil engineer. Just amazing. As you can tell from the video, such an articulate young lady.
Right.
She is one of 4 children that my wife and I, our family, sponsors, and I've been able to meet all of them in person.
Okay, so you have a personal tie then with Mary.
Yeah. And it was kind of interesting how it happened because we produced this video the first time that we were there with these rescue girls. And so there's actually a year between a couple of the shots. You can't really pick it up in the video. But somebody had sponsored her but then quit sponsoring. And so I was sending profiles out at a church and her profile came out onto the table. And I'm like, I pulled it right off and said, I know who that girl is.
Yeah.
She's a superstar on camera. She was amazing on this video. Our family's going to sponsor her. And so that's what happened. And so that's how we began sponsoring Mary. But we've met the young man that we sponsor in India. His name's Jayashanth. His father passed away. His mother is a sustenance farmer. And this is a very bright young man who, without sponsorship, would not pursue his dream to be a computer engineer. He's absolutely brilliant. And so this last time when I walked on campus, and we'd met him a couple times before, his roommate said, he talks about you guys all the time. Every day he talks about his sponsor.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow. For us, you know, we have an automatic payment that comes out, and you know, it really challenged me that we need to even, I have his picture in my office.
Right.
But for this boy, it has completely changed his world. In fact, our partner said to us on our second visit, are you ready to see your son again? And I'm like, my sons are back in America. But that's so much how this young man sees us. Having his back, even though we're halfway around the world, he genuinely feels loved and cared about.
Maybe that can be the danger, is that we might just look at this as a budgetary decision.
Right.
But the other side of it is a possibility, an opportunity to have a life transformed.
Yeah.
So
sure.
I'm sure some of the people looking at this or enjoying this program are wondering, how can I get involved? Tell me about that process.
Sure. We have a couple of ongoing needs that are always going to be there. One is for more sponsors.
Yeah.
So on our website, childimpact.org, we have children listed by country. You can choose by age group, boy or girl, and you can read a little bit about them and choose to sponsor a child.
Yeah.
And so that's an amazing way to do that. Maybe you've always had a dream of having 10 kids.
Right.
Here's a chance to do that. So I didn't count the 4 that we're sponsoring, but I know not everybody can adopt. And so, but I do believe that most Americans, most first world individuals could sponsor a child. So it's $32 a month for a day student and $45 a month for a boarding student. And this literally changes their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. As we wrap up, is there anything else you wanted to add about just, I'm so passionate about wanting people to just discover what God has in store for them. How does God want you to use your life to enhance your community or to help somebody else? What would you say to somebody who's been resisting that call?
Yeah. I think there's so many worthy causes that we also, again, can become paralyzed to inaction because there's so many options. Most of us process about 4 to 6 options well. And after that, we become overwhelmed and can't make a decision.
Yeah.
So that's a challenge. And so even as I share what those needs are, I want to be as focused as I can be. And I think as I've reflected on all the ways that we can make a difference in this world, I love focusing on children because they have their whole life ahead of them.
Yes.
They're vulnerable. And so adults, and I think even particularly I think about men, we're called to be protectors, not perpetrators. And so these girls, these young boys, some of them have perpetrators that have been exploiting them. They need protectors to step in and say, I will make sure that this child, first and foremost, has a safe place.
That's right.
And so that's why we also have what we call Operation Child Rescue, where we fight human trafficking. And so we're looking for people who will partner with us on a one-time basis or a monthly basis for our rescue projects. Some of these places we cannot even put these children's profiles on our website because the work that we're doing there is in a very dangerous country.
Yeah.
So we call those our secret projects. And so we have so many opportunities to rescue children, but we need individuals who will step up and say, I will be a protector. Or I'll be a mother bear, and I'm going to look after all these young kids that need me to be a mama for them, and know that somebody loves them and is praying for them halfway around the world.
That's right. Well, Tom, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for coming and telling us about the project, but more importantly for being that example of being willing to stand up to do something different than maybe was outside of your training, and putting kids first and community first. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And folks, we said this more than once, many times, and it bears saying again, God has a plan for you, and He wants you engaged. There are so many things out there that it can be overwhelming. But like Tom said, the opportunity we have to engage in the life of a child, to make a difference for somebody, they're living experiences that are so different than what we do. But there's a need there. I think of the story of the Good Samaritan and the opportunity we have to engage in a healthy way in representing Christ in our community. So as you go forward, I just pray that you will look at this contact information, think about this conversation, and think about what opportunities God has placed in front of you. We'll see you on the next episode of Better Life Conversations.